Crime crackers.
When I was little, my grandma Helena Connelly often took me to the Western European sculpture section of the art museum. She would sit on a bench for a long time, looking at a marble sculpture of a young woman called Light as Wind. Only in those moments did Grandma look happy. She probably inherited her passion for the arts from her father. Grandma's mansion resembled a museum itself. Antiques from the times of Louis the Sun King, paintings by renowned artists, and rare volumes in the library. But it wasn't the only distinctive feature of the Connellys. We were a kind of magazine picture in which everything was perfect. Almost a royal family. I remember Mom, adjusting my dress or hair, used to tell me strictly, "You're a Connelly, so you must be perfect." So instead of having fun as other kids did, I sat quiet as a mouse, dressed in my pretty dresses, at receptions or recited a poem for the guests, unable to understand its meaning being only 5. I have almost no memory of my grandpa. He died before I even reached 5 years old. Grandma, as Mom did later, married again on, so to speak, favorable terms. The matter of love has always been out of the question in the Connelly family. It was all about increasing assets or influence through marriage, but I don't think anyone was happy because of it. Mom and Dad put up with each other for a long time before he left, but Mom and Grandma's relationship was even worse than that of my parents. All the time, Mom had to listen to Grandma reproaching her about her behavior, her inability to keep her husband, and absence of the qualities that he, head of the Connelly family, needed to possess. As I approached 17, I realized I didn't want to live such a life. At 20, I left home altogether and entered the medical school of the university. I rarely spoke to my family, but I was happy to receive an invitation to Grandma's birthday. It was her 90th anniversary. The reception was held at the art museum, of which Grandma was the main patron. The hall was crowded with members of the Manhattan elite. Everyone was lined up to greet my grandmother, and she was walking past the guests with her head raised high. She smiled at some and complimented them. She lingered in front of the others to discuss the latest news, and she even reprimanded some. Grandma destroyed an article written by one of the best critics, doing it strictly and reasonably, making the poor man stand like a schoolboy who received a bad mark. Nobody dared to argue with Helena Connelly. She was respected and feared. The only person she didn't criticize was her personal doctor and friend, Mr. Mortimer. That evening, he was very moody. Grandma took his hand. They talked for a while, and all this time, the doctor was nervously glancing at his watch. Finally, Grandma smiled, hugged him, and went on. At the reception, I was with my boyfriend, Alex. We'd studied together at the university. He decided he needed to talk to my grandma. I tried to dissuade him, but Alex wanted her approval of our marriage because my mother disapproved of it. It was very important to Alex, so when Grandma left the hall, he hurried after her. Expecting a scandal, I took a sip of champagne and heard my aunt cousin Alice soothe her daughter Anna. She even gave her a pill so she would stop crying. Grandma cracked a joke about Anna's plastic surgery that was a little too rude. And now the girl was wiping her tears, repeating what a terrible person Helen was, while Alice was agreeing, claiming the crone was 90, so it would be better if it were her funeral. The cruel irony made these words prophetic. Grandma was found dead in the opposite wing of the museum, at the staircase leading to the Western European sculpture section. The search for her began at the end of the reception, when she didn't come up to the microphone for the traditional toast. Until then, nobody had noticed her absence, trying to distance themselves as much as possible from my grandma's sharp tongue. The police stated that, considering her injuries, she had been most likely pushed down from the stairs. Grandma had serious injuries to her spine, head, and neck, and her pelvis and ribs were fractured. A sharp edge of a rib punctured the lung, causing pneumothorax, a leak of air into the rib cage. Grandma died because she didn't receive timely medical aid. I was scared to even think that she'd been lying, suffocating under the stairs, unable to call for help. I spent the next day with Mom. She couldn't recover from what had happened and was drinking Relaxerel all the time. This medicine had only appeared recently, but the promotion did its work. Everyone around was taking it to calm down and improve their lives. However, its quality is highly doubtful. As an addictive drug, its dosage must be prescribed by a doctor. I tried to persuade Mom not to take those pills, but she wouldn't even listen. Only Alex's phone call distracted us from a quarrel. He was being summoned for an interrogation as a suspect in Helen's murder. I went to see him. Alex told me the police had little evidence, as even before they arrived, the guests had left plenty of footprints on the site of the crime. At Helena's request, the museum security cameras were turned off on the reception day. Alex was being summoned because some witnesses saw him run after Helena, but he swore he hadn't done it. Remember, 5 minutes afterward, I was standing next to you telling you of my conversation with your grandma, he told me. And indeed, it was so. Alex was back quickly. He excitedly told me how Grandma had asked him if he promised to make me happy, and after he gave a positive answer, she gave her blessing on our marriage. Alex told me it looked like she was in a hurry, and he also thought Grandma had had a little too much alcohol, because her speech was incoherent. He'd suggested accompanying her, but she'd refused. And when she'd touched his hand, her skin had been cold and a little sticky. Grandma had never drunk, and these symptoms could be the signs of poisoning. What if nobody had pushed her down the stairs? Could she have been poisoned? I called the detective who was in charge of the case and asked him for a kidney autopsy. The next day, I had confirmation of my theory. The detective called me and listed the substances that were in excess in Grandma's body. They were all present in Relaxarel. I envisioned Mom's face. Had she killed Grandma? I went to see her. On my way there, I recalled witnessing one of their scandals. Mom was crying and shouting, "You always hated me. I was never good enough for you." Since then, I'd begun to see an abyss between them. Their relationship had gotten even worse after Dad had left us, which cost our family quite a sum, given the marriage contract. Mom started taking tranquilizers and antidepressants. Soon, she began investing the money from the trust fund in strange, unverified businesses until she lost everything and ended up dependent on Grandma once again, who paid for her life, cars, and mansion. When I arrived at Mom's, she was in bed, holding a glass of wine, and absently zapping TV channels. On every channel, they're only talking about the death of the incredible Helena Connelly, she said. A patron, an altruist, a traveler. They spent a whole minute talking about her conquering Mount Everest. Do you know when your grandma climbed that mountain? On her 8th birthday. I was looking at Mom, feeling immensely sorry for her. I saw a little girl craving at least a bit of her mom's attention. I remembered that whenever we'd come to visit Grandma, I'd been supposed to present her with a picture or play the piano in front of everyone, while Mom had been telling how the teachers praised my talents. It was as if she'd shifted her wish to please and impress Grandma on me, and in doing so, she'd been spoiling our relationship. I spent some time listening to Mom telling me how lucky I was to not know what it means to be Helena's daughter. Finally, I found the courage to tell her that Grandma had been poisoned with the pills Mom took. She giggled nervously and said she would have never dared to do it. Besides, after Mom had lost all her money, Helena had crossed her out of her will, claiming the Connellys' money was supposed to stay with those who knew how to use it. The lawyer is to read out her will soon, so we'll see who's lucky, Mom said. And she was right. The one who received everything had a motive. Almost all of the Connelly clan gathered for the announcement of the will. Mom and I received Grandma's mansion with all her collections of paintings and antiques. I also received an envelope from Grandma, which I decided to open later. She also distributed some money among other relatives, including my aunt cousin Alice. But the larger share of her wealth went to the funds that provided aid to children and protected the environment. I glanced at Aunt Alice and thought she wasn't very pleased with the will. I remember her giving some pills to her daughter at the reception. So I came up to her and, complaining that I felt unwell, asked her if she happened to have a tranquilizer. Alice took Relaxarel out of her purse. I took the blister pack and went to the restroom. Could it be Aunt who secretly gave Grandma the medicine? I informed the police of my suspicion. Alice was arrested. She became the primary suspect in the case, given the evidence provided by me and other relatives who knew Aunt's opinion about Helena. Later that night, I couldn't calm down, thinking of Alice, but my attention was caught by the envelope Grandma's lawyer had given me. The letter had been written on her birthday eve. There was my name on the envelope and a request to open it at the art museum next to the Light is Wind. So I went there the following day. Grandma wrote that she was proud of me and my decision to follow my own path and my heart. I never had the courage to do this, she wrote. I was constrained by the conservative education and the time when the woman's voice didn't matter. I already had your mom when I met a young sculptor. He was the love of my life. I was ready to leave your grandpa, but he blackmailed me, saying I would never see your mom, and my love's life would be ruined. Those conditions and my fear of poverty made me stay in the family. However, ever since, all the life died within me, and only emptiness was left. And it poisoned my heart. Yes, I failed to be a loving mother. Your mom will never forgive me, but I can understand. I was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer about 2 months ago. Considering it was found too late and my age, the prognoses are not good, but I won't let some sickness deprive me of my life. And if I didn't live it as I wanted, I will at least pass away as I wish. I am planning to do it next to the sculpture you are currently sitting at. It was made by the man I loved. Tears filled my eyes and were running down my cheeks in big drops. I put down the letter and looked at the sculpture, only now realizing that this young woman was my grandmother. I tried to pull myself together and finish reading. Mortimer is the only one who knows of my plans. Grandma wrote. He did his best to try to dissuade me, but such was my decision. The doctor helped me schedule the dosage of the medicine, so I have time to celebrate my jubilee and tell everyone my final word. You will find another letter in the envelope. It contains my confession to the police, but it doesn't mention Mortimer. I don't want him to be punished as a murderer. Regarding me, I will simply fall asleep next to the statue. I hope I will have a good sleep." The tears were flowing down my cheeks. She didn't have time to reach this bench and say her last word. She probably took a little bit too much of the medicine, and Alex delayed her, so she fainted on the stairs. At the end of the letter, Grandma added that life is worth living when it's full of happiness and love. And I knew it was going to be so for me and my future children.
Crime Crackers.